What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a minute. I've been inactive here on my channel for quite a few months. A little bit more active on my TikTok channel that I launched a couple of months ago. I've been doing a little bit more content there, unfortunately, but I'm about to hit my 1-year anniversary of launching this channel. And with it being the 1-year anniversary since I launched this channel, I had to start it off again and do the video that initially started off this channel, which was my top favorite 20 albums of the year. And so here we are again. 2021 is a wrap already, and there was so much good music that came out this past year, and I wanted to make sure I made a video for everyone to share my personal list of which albums I appreciated and loved this past year. So let's just get started. Let's get right into it. At number 20, we have 21 Pilots with Scaled and Icy. There's nothing groundbreaking on this album in terms of new sound being generated, but that's not really what I was looking for 21 Pilots this time around. Overall, it feels like a great album with great tunes and all around good vibes. While I do appreciate the grittier and darker themes that they've created in their past albums, to have this a little bit more toned down and a little bit more happier sounding album was nice for a change from the band. At number 19, we have Dan Campbell's Other People's Stories. When I read about the news that this album was on its way, it was definitely surprising to me just because I caught it maybe a month before the album's actual release date. So once it got on my radar, I knew it was a must. For those of you that aren't aware who Dan Campbell is, he is the vocalist of pop punk band The Wonder Years and also Aaron West and the Roaring Twenties. It's like those projects. This project is filled with that songwriting that we've grown accustomed to from Dan in the past years. The writing and his raw vocals really make it easy for you to just kind of understand and hang on to every lyric that he sings. And although this album did come out late in the year, it still managed to crack my top 20 due to the overall quality that Dan produced on this album. At number 17, we have Kississippi's Mood Ring. Throughout the entire album, Zoe Reynolds does a great job in displaying her emotions and topping them with glittery and synthy guitars. At number 16, we have Loot with Gold Mouth. On Gold Mouth, Loot laces every track with punchy and mellowy hip-hop beats and just pinpoint lyricism. At number 15, A Day to Remember's You're Welcome. And while this album was faced with a lot of criticism, negative criticism, and a lot of negative reception from the fans, I personally enjoyed this record a lot. I know it was a very different direction for the band to take, a little bit more of a poppier direction. With the songs that they were releasing prior to the album, I kind of already had a sense they were gonna go this route, so I guess that sort of prepared me. There is tracks that I do skip on this album, but it doesn't take away from it too much for me. There's a lot of the songs that I do enjoy, and so that's my take on it. I hope I don't mess this name up. At number 14, we have Mina Okabe with Better Days. This indie and dreamy pop project sounds refreshing and serves up a healthy dose of depth in terms of lyrics to make it easy for you to listen all the way through from beginning to end. At number 13, we had Free Throw, Piecing It Together. At number 12, we have Grayscale with Umbra. Umbra surprised me, to be honest. I went into it thinking that the record would have some good takeaway moments, but I was wrong because as a whole, Umbra manages to dish out just an overall solid project full of alternative, rock, pop, delightfulness. Colin Walsh smashes the vocals on this one, in my opinion. He just sounds very comfortable in this pop, rock pocket that they created on this album. My favorite track on the album has to be Live Again. The harmonic and gospel vocals at the end just do it for me and just takes that track over the top for me in a good way. At number 11, we have Marlin Craft's How We Intended. Earlier this year, I made a little spotlight video about Marlin Craft on my TikTok channel where I highlighted just the incredible year he's been having in 2021 with all the releases that he had and How We Intended being one of those projects he released this past year. In my eyes, this man had the most impressive year in the hip-hop landscape by far. And that's saying something given the amazing year that we had for hip-hop. How We Intended as a whole, to me, shows the talent and just complete artistry that Marlin Craft has to offer in hip-hop. He's got hip-hop checked down. He should have the respect if he doesn't already. And he has the tools to get him to that next level, to be super successful commercially if he wanted. But How We Intended is an all-around prominent hip-hop album. Check it out if you haven't. At number 10, we have Blue with The Color Blue. The Color Blue makes it onto my top 10, not just due to the overall quality that's on this album, but also because of how cohesive it is, how well put together it is. This album isn't a concept album, but he basically creates a theme centered around the color blue throughout the whole entire album, in which he tells stories, draws correlations of life lessons to this specific color, and he does it without overdoing it or just sounding repetitive. And in my eyes, that's like super impressive, which really makes this album stand out that much more. At number 9, we have Churches with Scream Violence. This is studio album 4 for the synth-pop machine that we know as Churches. And with this one, they take it back a little bit more to their original roots as far as the synth and electronic sounds go. Only this time they piece it together alongside this darker dynamic and just darker sound throughout the entire album. And while they took it back to like their beginning sound, this record still sounds refreshing and it sounds a bit more mature. It's as if they took the next step. At number 8, we have This Wildlife's Ever Blossom. Fresh into their independent venture, This Wildlife dealt 2021 with the emotionally and meticulously packed Ever Blossom. By now, anyone aware of the duo's music understand the customary emotion that Kevin and Anthony put into their writing. And in Ever Blossom, we get all of that just in a more thorough manner, if that makes any sense. To me, it feels like this album progressed both sonically and lyrically from where they had left off on their previous album, Petaluma. That album was very good, but as good as that album was, Ever Blossom comes off a little bit more polished. For me, I think that comes down to the writing that they penned down on this album and the harmonies that they created to go alongside these lyrics. They're just pure and so meaningful. This Wildlife is 4 albums into their career, and with every single album, I feel like they just keep setting the bar a little bit higher and higher every time. I can't recommend this album enough. If you're not aware of the band, please check out This Wildlife, listen to this album, listen to their entire catalog. I'm pretty sure it'll struck some chords in your heart, or you'll relate to it some way or the other. They're very good, and you should definitely check them out. At number 7, we have Bratty with TDBN. Along with the already excessive list of albums that I consumed in 2021, came a trip down the rabbit hole that is Mexican indie pop. There was definitely a handful of projects that I enjoyed, but none of them captivated me as much as the dreamy TDBN by Bratty. The Culiacan's native's voice is as specific as they come, and it just enhances the music on this album that much more. Enough to make you feel like you're floating freely in midair without a care in the world. This is one of those albums that got better with every single listen to me, and it keeps getting better with every listen to me. At number 6, we have Hawthorn Heights with The Rain Just Follows Me. Let me just start off by praising the impressive run that Hawthorn Heights has created here, dating all the way back to 2001. That's 21 years of emo delightfulness with 7 studio albums to show for. I had previously made an appreciation video over on my TikTok channel over this album, and just like that video, my appreciation for this album still stands. The Rain Just Follows Me is a nostalgic sounding Hawthorn Heights album with a modern sound to it. I honestly did not have this high of expectations for this album. I thought it would be good, but I didn't think it would land on my top 10 before it released. Once it released and I took a listen to it, I was blown away. It definitely made me feel like I was back in 2004, 2005, 2006 listening to this. I really like this album, and I'm very happy to see this album in my top 10. At number 5, we have Chelsea Cutler with When I Close My Eyes. Around the time that this album dropped, I already had a solid 10 that I really thought were gonna be in my top 10 albums of the year, but when this album dropped and I took a listen, that hindered it all. This is the sophomore album for the Connecticut singer-songwriter Chelsea Cutler, and far from a sophomore slump, Chelsea delivers a self-confidently written, vivid-sounding, coming-of-age pop album. Beginning to end, this album is filled with vibes and bobs as Chelsea lays out her feelings in the open for us to hear and feel where she stands and how she feels in her young career. I think what I love the most about this album is just how confident Chelsea came out in her writing. That, mixed in with the honesty that she displays on When I Close My Eyes, really elevates the album for me. If we were to look at my top 20 album list in the form of the NCAA March Madness bracket, this album would be equivalent to a bracket buster team, in the way that it steadily and quickly arose amongst the favorite albums of the year for me, and one of the most listened to albums of the year for me. At number 4, we have Nas with King's Disease 2. This one just flat out speaks for itself. Thriving off of King's Disease 1, Nas and Hit Boy returned to drop the sequel, and they more than delivered. In fact, they surpassed all that good that they had done in King's Disease 1 and damn near perfected it here on this one. And that's not a knock on King's Disease 1 at all. It simply comes down to the rule of practice makes perfect, and Nas and Hit Boy have struck gold in the chemistry that they have developed. They just feed off of each other so naturally and organically, and it's truly rewarding for all the listeners. Interestingly enough, they just dropped a 9-track EP titled Magic, in which they confirm that King's Disease 3 is well on its way. I couldn't be any happier for Nas, for Hit Boy, and for all the hip hop fans. We're witnessing what I believe will go down as a legendary collaboration between two hip hop legends that will accomplish an exceptional body of work when it's all said and done. At number 3, we have Kanye West, Donda. Where do I even start with this one? In typical Kanye West fashion, Donda had a one-of-a-kind album rollout. It was a roller coaster of a ride for sure, but it's one that I can look back and appreciate. Aside from that wild album rollout, the album itself turned out to be very pleasing and definitely worth the wait. With Donda, it really just comes down to this at this point. If you're a Kanye West fan, you like the album. You took something out of the album. If you're not a Kanye West fan, you absolutely dislike this album, and that's okay. In my opinion, Donda offers the same spiritual and gospel direction that Kanye had laid out on Jesus is King, but also grabs inspiration from the life of Pablo. And while the track list is pretty lengthy, some of the tracks on here are pretty short, and so it doesn't prolong the listening experience. My favorite song on this album, and honestly favorite song of the past year, is Jesus Lord. Jesus Lord summarizes and showcases who and where Kanye West is in the year 2021. The verse delivered here by Kanye West on Jesus Lord is one of the most impressive and open verses that he has laid out in quite some time. The storytelling that he executes here really takes you back to the older Kanye West days, and the vulnerable lyrics he displays really helps you feel and connect to the song in a very powerful way. Donda by no means is a perfect album, but it is a definitive and pure Kanye record. What makes this album stand out to me the most is the openness and vulnerability that Kanye confidently expresses on this album. Never one to not speak his mind, Kanye West remains true to himself, and Donda is evident of that. For these next two albums, I simply kept going back and forth onto which one I thought deserved the number 1 spot. Both are very, very incredible albums in my opinion, and are definitely worthy of the number 1 spot, but only one could get there. And so at number 2, we have j.cole with The Off Season. In a landscape where we had so many great albums come out this past year, many of which made it onto my top 20 and even made it past my top 20 into my honorable mentions, when it came to j.cole's The Off Season, I frequently found myself revisiting this album on a daily basis. Off Season has to be considered one of j.cole's best work in quite some time, and it has to be considered as one of his best works throughout his whole career in my opinion. Personally, I felt KOD was more of a disappointment in my opinion, so to have this one, to have him return with The Off Season was definitely a bounce back. You gotta call it how it is. Cole is just absolutely spitting all over this album from beginning to end, starting off with the opening track 95 South. I don't know if he could have chosen a better track to open up an album, but that one definitely lays out the groundwork for what's to come on The Off Season. It definitely sets the tone for the album, and j.cole definitely delivers. If you're a hip-hop listener regularly, avid hip-hop listener, I don't see how you listen to this and you don't give Cole his flowers. It's okay to not be a j.cole fan, that's perfectly fine, but I'm a firm believer in giving credit where it's due, and on The Off Season, it's definitely due for j.cole. Weirdly enough, I was a little bit afraid after this album dropped that even though I enjoyed it, I was scared that it might start losing appeal for me throughout the year, but that wasn't the case. In fact, it did the opposite. As the months kept passing by, I just kept appreciating this album more and more. For me, The Off Season can be regarded as one of his best projects in terms of albums, and fits right alongside Forest Hill Drives and For Your Eyes Only, specifically right in between the both for me. And now to that number 1 spot. For me, my favorite album of the past year in 2021 goes to Citizen, Life in Your Glass World. I don't know even how to sum up this record and how much I love this album. It's just full of energy, it's so fun. Citizen sounds as confident as ever on this album. And at this point in their career, it feels as if they can't do no wrong based off on how creative they can get with their sound and just how pleasing and easy they make it for a listener to listen to their record just based off of how catchy they can make their music. As I made mention of energy for this album, right off the gates in the opening track, Death Dance Approximately, my goodness. By far my favorite track on that album, and it never slows down on that point forward. The vocals on here are fucking fantastic, and the guitar work on this album is fucking phenomenal. I love it. It's very fucking catchy, it's groovy, and it's very punchy at the same time. I don't know if it's just me or not, but I definitely get hits of the Strokes or inspiration from the Strokes sprinkled in throughout the albums in short pockets here and there. I don't know if it's just me, but that's just what I heard. And regardless, it fucking works on here. If you haven't listened to this album, or if you're not aware of Citizen, if you're a listener of rock music, I definitely recommend this album, and let me know what you think. If you're not a rock listener, I still think you should listen to this album. Maybe you'll take something out of it. It's a very, very catchy and fun record. So that's it. That's the list. That'll do it for my top 20 favorite albums of 2021. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope it wasn't too much. I hope it wasn't overwhelming. I definitely put some effort into this video, so I hope it shows out in the final product. Making this list was extra fun, as it is every single year. It was very, very tough for this past year because there were so many albums aside from the top 20 that I mentioned that were really, really on my radar and that I really, really listened to and appreciated so much this past year. But I could only fit 20. I'd hate to put you all through a top 25 or top 30 at that. 20 just seemed right. And so those were my 20 that made it onto my personal list. If any of your favorite albums made it onto my list, let me know in the comments below. If there were some of your favorite albums that you thought should have made the list or you recommend, please share those with me down below, and I can let you know if I actually had those on my honorable mentions or if I wasn't aware, so I could take a listen and take some more music in. With that being said, that'll do it for this one. 2021, I started off pretty productive. I didn't finish off as productive as I planned for as far as my YouTube channel went. I did start my TikTok channel, and so a lot of my attention and creative content went towards that from the middle of the year to now. But the plan is to start off 2022 with the same mindset that I had in the year before. You know, I gotta start showing love to my YouTube channel, and you know, sometimes life things happen. The plan is to continue 2022 and show some more love to my YouTube channel, and I am gonna try my best and aim for that, guys. With that being said, I hope you all have a great year. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you take some music that I shared with you from my top 20 and take a listen to it. I'll catch you on the next one. Can't wait.